This is at once kind of like gray, kind of like decimating to read. And then on the other hand, it feels vindicating. It's a very bittersweet mix of emotions to see a bad thing happen that proves something you've been saying for a long time, right? Or not even just something you've been saying, but something that you and a bunch of people have been saying for a long time, and being met with a lot of incredulous, meh kind of response to it. And that point is that the Republicans, the GOP Congresswoman, and they do tend to be GOP Congresswomen lately for some reason, Boebert, MTG, etc., and the other Republican lawmakers who have been pushing so hard against trans rights, trans identity, and trans acceptance, they love to weaponize and use the idea that they want to protect kids to justify their hatred of trans people or just LGBT people in general. But when it comes to any issue of actually protecting children from things that we 100,000 billion% know are a threat to them, they seem very quiet on these issues. And the funnier thing about that quietness is that oftentimes the issue of child sex trafficking and sex abuse, well, usually the perpetrators are on the right, whether it be religious right-wing institutions like the Catholic Church or, well, a lot of conservative parents out there who think it's okay to, like, as Matt Walsh would say, what was the term? What was exactly he said? I break my kids' consent all the time is what Matt Walsh said, I believe. Yeah, this the standard conservative viewpoint is that children are basically objects to be owned and not autonomous humans with any rights or deserving any rights for that matter. So, as you can imagine, conservatives don't actually give a shit about protecting kids from child sexual abuse, or child sex trafficking or any of these things. And, this is obvious if you look at the states where, child marriage is still legal through loopholes or just explicitly. It's overwhelmingly red states, and the states that aren't red states where it's legal, the loopholes overwhelmingly tend to allow for right-wing fundamental religious exemptions to basically signing your kid off to marriage when they're like, it's like a 23-year-old when your kid's like 14. As long as the parent agrees, With that said, though, we're going to look at an article here from LGBTQ Nation, and it should make you sad, but it should also make you feel vindicated, because we've been saying this for a long time, and actions speak louder than words. Actions speak a lot louder than words, and people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, these other Republicans who are so fixated on this gay groomer narrative, let's just say their actions don't exactly suggest they care about protecting kids. Let's take a look at this. GOP Congress members who are very concerned about grooming vote against child sex abuse bill. Many of these 28 Republicans have been using grooming to score political points. They weren't willing to vote for a real bill to fight against child sex abuse. Numerous Republican Congress members who have accused LGBTQ plus people of sexualizing children just voted against a bill that would help the actual victims of child sex abuse. The bill, entitled Respect for Child Survivors Act, was developed with input from child welfare groups to address the mistreatment that child witnesses sometimes face during investigations of their own abuse. The bill requires the FBI to form multidisciplinary teams to investigate child sex abuse cases in a way that ensures accountability and transparency without re-traumatizing victims and their families. The teams would include investigative personnel, mental health professionals, medical personnel, family advocacy workers, child advocacy workers, and prosecutors, Newsweek reported. The bipartisan bill, which was introduced by Senators John Cornyn, Republican from Texas, and Chris Coons, a Democrat from Delaware, Lindsey Graham, a Republican from South Carolina, and Amy Klobuchar, a Democrat from Minnesota, I think this is what MN is, passed the House with 215 Democratic and 170 Republican votes. Remember, there's not more Democrats than Republicans in the House, I believe. Is there? Actually, is the House... Do Republicans have the House or do Democrats have the House right now? I'm completely blanking on that. I actually don't know. Usually Democrats do, but I think it it swung the other way this time around, didn't it? Right now, Democrats do. That makes sense. Yeah, the Democrats almost always have the House. That makes sense. It takes tremendous sorry, we're reading a quote now. It takes tremendous courage for young victims of sexual assault to tell their story and overcome the fear that they may not be taken seriously, may be ignored, or may be wrongfully blamed, said Cornyn. To avoid re-traumatizing victims during the investigation process, it is imperative we give these individuals the support they need to ensure survivors feel respected during the interview process and abusers are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Republicans aren't a big fan of that because most child sex abusers who are actually prosecuted, well, let's just say the Republicans aren't a big fan of any movement that seeks. It's interesting how Republicans are so fixated on fighting against the Me Too movement, which is all about speaking out against institutionalized sexual abuse, and started in Hollywood. The Me Too movement started in Hollywood around actresses primarily in Hollywood coming out with their stories of being exploited sexually in some way or harassed in some way by people in positions of power in the industry. And meanwhile, these same people say, nah, you crazy feminists just want to call every man rapists. And meanwhile, these same people will then go on to say that all trans women are men who are rapists in their mind by extent, I guess, pretending to be women to attack women and hurt them and get into their spaces or whatever, right? And then they'll also say that we need to worry about how Hollywood elites are turning kids into adrenochrome and raping them in basements of pizza parlors, right? So literally they fight against a cultural movement based around exposing powerful people in Hollywood for harassing women. But then go and start a conspiracy theory, which isn't even, to be fair, pedophilia in Hollywood is not a conspiracy theory, but the Balenciaga kind of stuff is definitely is. Pizzagate is a conspiracy theory. That kind of stuff, right? QAnon. There is no consistency in anything they believe other than minorities are bad, the left is bad, and we need to win so we can destroy all those that disagree with us or all those that happen to be born a way that we don't like. Those are the only consistent principles in any of their different positions. Everything else is contradictory. Those are the only consistent through lines. However, 28 Republicans voted against the bill. These Republicans included Representative Lauren Boebert. You guys might know her as one of the biggest pushers of the gay groomer narrative, so she's against helping kids and getting them therapy and prosecuting their victims, okay? Or not their... prosecuting the victims of these children, prosecuting their victimizers. Marjorie Taylor Greene, pretty much the exact same boat there. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, both big QAnon types. I believe Marjorie Taylor Greene back in 2020 said that the California forest fires were started by Jewish space lasers. That was pretty crazy. Louis Gohmert from Texas. I don't know who this guy is by name, but he's probably a fucking demon. Paul Gosar from Arizona. I do know who that is. Paul Gosar is a demon. He's actually friends with Nick Fuentes. I believe Paul Gosar is actually friends with Nicholas J. Fuentes, neo-Nazi and advocate for lowering the age of consent, I guess? I don't know. The guy's just gone on a rant or two, too many in my view, about how the age of consent is a leftist feminist construct. And, well, he's not a big fan of leftist feminist constructs. He then goes on to argue why the age of consent is dumb. So I guess he's in favor of abolishing the age of consent, perhaps. So we got Paul Gosar, friend of that guy here. No doubt a neo-Nazi. Rick Crawford from Arkansas, who I don't know by name, but sounds like a demon as well. All these Republicans have opposed the expansion of LGBTQ plus civil rights and may have accused the LGBTQ plus community of sexualizing or grooming kids. I don't even like the wording of they stand against expansion of LGBTQ rights. That kind of frames it as if gay rights is like a balloon, right? And the more rights and the more equal that gay, trans, LGBT, whatever people are, the bigger that balloon gets. And eventually the balloon has reached this point where somebody has grabbed onto it and is like holding it from going any further. And the problem right now is that the balloon wants to get bigger, but it can't get bigger because there's hands holding it from going any further. When in reality what's happening is those hands are squeezing the balloon down smaller. They're not just stopping expansion of, they're not just like halting the expansion of trans and LGBTQ whatever rights. They're trying to delete them. They're trying to take rights away. They're trying to degrade at them and move LGBT acceptance both socially and legally back to something akin to the 90s or the 80s. That's what they're really fighting for right now. Right now, they're tackling the topic of gay marriage. They're trying to undo gay marriage. Federal gay marriage happened in 2015. They are fighting to undo that now. They're trying to bring us all the way back to gay marriage being a debatable discussion, and probably not just debatable, but just gone. They want it gone. You've seen Ben Shapiro talk about how he fully supports them removing the right for gay people to get married because he does not believe that gay marriage is moral and that the state legitimizing gay marriage is the state legitimizing immorality in his mind. At least that's what he says. So, these people truly do not believe that they can live happily in the same America as minorities they dislike. It's just, they have to kill you to be happy. For them to be happy in this world, you have to be dead. It's not like a live and let live, we have different political opinions thing. They need you to be dead, because as long as you are alive, living your best life, being happy, even if you're leaving them alone, you are a demonstration that an alternative lifestyle, in their mind, is possible, happy, and fulfilling. And that, in their mind, is dangerous, because that means even, now you're making more people want to live like that. And now you're a destructive force to their society in their mind, which makes you a threat. And what do you do to a threat? You eliminate it, which is why they so oftentimes suggest that they would be morally in the right to kill you because you're trans or gay, LGBT of any kind. Sometimes it's just if you're Jewish or black or just brown, any type of POC. Indigenous even, they'll go that far too. These people aren't just reasonable but still misled individuals who have an idealized version of America that they're striving for, just like we do, but they have a different way of achieving it. No. Their idealized version of America already kind of existed back in the day, and we clawed our way out of that fucking hell. And you better believe they want to drag us right the fuck back. Grooming is a term for attempting to sexually abuse children. Conservatives have used it to describe any mention of LGBTQ plus identities in front of children as a way of associating pedophilia with LGBTQ plus people, harkening back to the old negative stereotype. In June, Boebert accused queer-inclusive teachers of grooming kids with educational flashcards showing a pregnant man on one of the cards. In November, Green called a gay Californian state Democratic Senator Scott Wiener. Hey, Scott Wiener's the dude who was doing Bill SB 519, the one that would decriminalize possession and use of hallucinogenic drugs in California. Yeah, base dude. A communist groomer for calling groomer an anti-LGBTQ hate word. Damn, base Scott Wiener. Responding to Wiener's tweet, Green wrote, "Pass my Protect Children's Innocent Act to stop communist groomers like this from using state government power to take children away from their parents to allow a for-profit medical industry to chop off these confused children's genitals before they are even old enough to vote," she said. By the way, Republicans, and I'm pretty sure Marjorie Taylor Greene included, don't believe that 18 should be the voting age. They want to move it to 21 or older. If for those of you guys who didn't, look at Twitter following the recent election, when the Republicans saw that young people were overwhelmingly voting Democrat, which kind of throws a wrench in their narrative that conservatism is the new punk rock and this new generation is getting more and more right wing because the left has gone too far. The second they saw oh shit, Zoomers vote massively Democrat still in this election, what did their narrative immediately become? How do we stop young people from voting? How do we stop young people from voting? They immediately start talking about how we need to start raising the minimum age for voting up to 21. That was their response to losing an election because so many young people voted Democrat. Their response is we need to we need to increase the minimum age to vote. So their goal is for you to literally be able to get drafted if there was a draft, which there never will be another one again. But regardless, you'd be able to get drafted, join the military and fight and die for your country, but you won't be able to vote and you won't be able to sit down and have a beer or a cigarette or a vape or weed. That is basically what it would look like. You turn 18, nice. You get to go to the military and die for your country, and you get to go to actual jail or prison if you commit a crime. No questions asked. Like, if you're, like, 17, 16, whatever, like, if you, I don't know, do a small misdemeanor, you might go to, like, juvie or something, whatever, right? But once you're 18, that's not a thing anymore, right? So you have more responsibility, more, like, burdens, and then you'd have like 3 or 4, whatever, I'm too high right now to do math, 3 more years, before you'd be able to do any of the things that adulthood allows you to do, such as drink, smoke, vote, any of those things, right? However, they will abolish the age of consent, so at the age of 14, you can get married to a hairy 36-year-old man who will rape you and get you pregnant with like 15 kids that you'll have to raise while he goes out and golfs with his buddies, and you cook and clean and basically wish for death every single night. So that'll be possible in their world. Doesn't that sound fun? GOP dream world, guys. Doesn't the GOP America sound fun? Sign me up for that shit right now. Actually, there are probably some bottoms in chat that would be like, "Ayo." Her bill would affect. Okay, sorry, I have to finish laughing at my own joke. Her bill would ban gender-affirming healthcare for transgender minors at the federal level, which she has compared to pedophilia. Yeah. In October, Gohmert co-sponsored a bill called the Stop the Sexualization of Children Act, which would ban any entity that receives federal money from talking about sexual orientation or gender identity to children under the age of 10. Stop the Sexualization of Children Act would ban any entity that receives federal money from talking about sexual orientation or gender identity to children under the age of 10. This means schools, by the way. So, like, there wouldn't be allowed to be any discussion about, like, your gender identity or sexual orientation in schools, not even in, like, a sex ed class. The goal isn't, like, oh, we just disagree, and you do whatever you want as long as it doesn't affect me. The goal is you aren't allowed to fucking exist. It's not, like, chill disagreement with these people. They want you dead. They really do. They do. Like, there's nothing about this that could lead you to any other conclusion. I'm not over-exaggerating, and I'm not overreacting. I think that's pretty fucking clear. The bill would go far beyond Florida's Don't Say Gay law, defining sexually oriented material as any topic involving gender identity, gender dysphoria, transgenderism, sexual orientation, or related topics. In 2016, Gosar suggested an amendment to ban transgender people from using public restrooms that align with their gender identity in U.S. governmental buildings. Transphobic politicians often say that such bills are necessary to prevent trans people from attacking women and children in public toilets, something that rarely ever occurs. Has it ever occurred? I assume that this article had to write rarely ever occurs to future-proof it, but I don't think that's ever occurred. And even if it had, I need you guys to... If you are like like some normie or a conservative or just somebody who isn't really all that big on trans people and you stumble across this video, I want you to imagine for a moment. A dude wants to like rape a woman, right? So he dresses up as a woman, wig, makeup, clothing, all that, goes out in public to go to a public bathroom to ambush a woman in said public bathroom. I don't know if maybe your critical thinking skills are broken or not, but personally, I imagine that line of events, and I think, holy fucking shit, this is not real. Listen, Maybe you've seen the Buffalo Bill movie or whatever, but for the most part, that kind of stuff tends to happen in movies. You know, it tends to be the premise of movies, horror movies even. So they're typically, you're not going to find a lot of like creepy dudes out there pretending to be women in order to get women's guard down, to victimize them. Because guess what? In our society right now, for the most part, if a man wants to like do something bad to a woman, he doesn't have to like hide himself like in that way to do it. Like rape and sexual assault happens all the time. If you're a TERF watching this, I would assume you're very familiar with the term patriarchy and rape culture. Hell, there's an entire movement that I mentioned before on the right, literally dedicated to fighting against Me Too, which is a movement all about empowering mostly women to speak out against rapists and sexual assaulters and other exploiters of what have you in like powerful positions, whether it be government, Hollywood, or, you know, YouTuber even, right? Like we do not live in a society where men are so afraid of like raping women. Like they're so afraid of raping women, I guess, that they have to protect. I don't even know what world you'd have to live in for that to make sense. That just doesn't happen. It doesn't make sense. Just on a logical level where you're just using common sense, it doesn't make sense. But then when you double check to see what the data looks like, it also still doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense on any level. Unless you really, really want it to and are trying to make it make sense in your own mind. That's called cognitive dissonance, by the way. It's a thing you're not supposed to do with the things that you believe in. It's notable that these politicians who spent the year making so much noise about LGBTQ plus people supposedly grooming children never speak as loudly against widespread child sex abuse in the Christian church, nor do they partner with organizations that actually oppose such abuse or child sex trafficking. And they weren't willing to even vote for a bill to address child sex abuse that got broad bipartisan support. Because who gets in trouble when the government goes after pedophiles? You cut a pedophile and a conservative bleeds. It's as simple as that. You cut a pedophile and a conservative bleeds. Anyway, absolutely monstrous behavior on the part of these GOP politicians, but this really shouldn't surprise you, if I'm being honest. Like, these people are monstrous, and if anything, this should make you feel, on one hand, absolutely just hollowed out and sad, but on the other hand, just vindicated that everything we've been saying about these absolutely demonic pieces of shit is just being proven correct by their actions at every fucking turn. At this point, it's not like, oh, we think this, oh, we think that. It's just, look at what they're doing. Look at how they vote. She voted against a bill that helps kids who are victims of rape, abuse, and child sex trafficking. Like, I don't know. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like down below. If you want to support me, you can also subscribe during the bell icon and comment down below. YouTube really likes the engagement. It pushes my content a lot more in the algorithm. You can also follow my social medias, all linked down below in the description, including my Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and my fan Discord. You can also sub on my Patreon as well. We're going to have some cool content going up on there eventually. You can also support me financially if you've got the money for it and don't need it for anything else on my website, xanderhall.com/live. You can donate, you can sub, and you can actually gift a sub to other people, as well as supporting me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, and Patreon as well. With all that said, thank you so much for watching, and have a good one.